just really as a reminder, OxLEP's Startup Club and what our purpose is. So we're here to support individuals who are thinking of starting their own business or those who are looking for some help with pivoting in light of the pandemic. So my name's Ant Parsons. I work with OxLEP Business. I work with Paul on a number of different programs with OxLEP Business. And we set up the Startup Club in October because we were recognizing there's always a lot of energy and enthusiasm about startups, particularly in Oxfordshire. But with the pandemic and with what's been going on in employment, there's an even bigger interest. So we recognized a need and we decided that we would do what we could to support those businesses. So we have a series of webinars. There were 5 before Christmas. We've got around 7 or 8 planned between now and the end of March. So you can join those, but you also get a chance to meet like-minded peers. So often there's up to 35, 40 people on these groups. What we do is that we invite everybody who joins the club to every one of the events. So there's some events there to look forward to. Data protection and cybersecurity. That's actually one of the SMEs that's joined the Startup Club who wants to share their experience of what they've done around data protection and going cyber secure. Launching a new product and service, marketing for beginners. Some of these are repeats of things we've covered before, but there was such a good interest in it, we felt it was worth doing it again. Right through to understanding SEO later on in March. Now, what I would say is that these are just the Startup Club events. There are also an awful lot of other webinars that OxLEP Business is running. So the best place to see them is on the OxLEP Business webpage and the events page. So there's a few links here. I've highlighted one event which is coming up next week, Digital Selling Foundations. Now, it's quite a tongue twister to say that, but it's basically how can you use social media and online presence to be selling. And at the moment, that's clearly important for a lot of businesses. So first link there you can go to and find all of the events. If you haven't yet filled in the business support tool, then you probably should. A link there to the business support tool. When you fill that in, our advisors then take a look at how you've answered the questions and send you a personal business support plan. It will point out what OxLEP and what others can do to help you and your business to grow. So, it would take 10 minutes to fill in, and, it's very valuable. And then finally, we've got this name of Startup Club. Oh, no, sorry, go back one, Paul. Startup Club, but there's also another Startup Club within our geography. So the Perch, which is an eco building in Bicester, they have a Startup Club as well, which is also kicking off today. So if you're an absolute glutton for punishment, then go and click on that link. It's between 6 and 8 tonight. You don't have to have joined tonight in order to join. You can pop in and out any week, but it's worth checking it out as well. So that's an 8-week program. We're in discussion with them to try and make sure that our programs are complementary. And I said I would give a plug for them. So I guess the good thing with that Startup Club is that once we've all been allowed to go back to work and work in location again, if you're looking for somewhere to hot desk or you're looking at flexible workspace, then that actually comes with it. So in Bicester at the eco building there, you can go and hot desk with other like-minded individuals. So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to hand over to the very capable Paul and let him introduce himself and today's topic.
Good evening, everyone. So some of you I have had the pleasure of meeting already, but for those of you who don't know me, my name's Paul Holmes. I'm one of the business advisors for OxLEP. I run my own business consultancy, and I kind of work with businesses from sort of pre-starts right the way through to multi-million-pound organizations, particularly focusing around growth. And a lot of the things we're going to be talking about today are the things that apply whether you are tiny and just starting to think about growth, or particularly when you get to sort of scale where you've already grown to a certain scale and now want to push on into the next level. The principles stay the same. This also applies, and a lot of the principles and the focus we're looking at here are the things that apply if you get to the point of being overwhelmed in your business as well. A lot of business owners get to the point where it's all about them running around 100 miles an hour, just trying to keep things ticking along. The principles that we're going to apply here are the things that will probably help you take control of your business and help you move forward as well. Lots of things I've been involved in, lots of things that I do around sort of various organisations, build buildings, run multi-million-pound projects, and I've been doing this for more years than I care to mention in terms of corporate business systems, and lots of things, just bringing advice and guidance. So those people who have already had one-to-ones with me have had sort of the pleasure of some of that experience and guiding them on their projects. As Ad said, if any of you haven't yet had sort of one-to-ones and are interested in a follow-up and talk about your business, whether it's about growth or some of the other aspects of it, then do sign up, and I look forward to talking to you at some point on an individual basis. So today we're talking about planning for growth. So this is the specifics of you want to grow the business. And I will say this a number of times this evening. Planning is absolutely key to this. Try and grow without planning, it can end up in disaster. So whether you're starting out and you're hoping to grow quickly, suddenly finding your product is in demand, lots of businesses over COVID have suddenly found their product has suddenly rocketed. I'm working with a multi-million-pound organisation that's literally doubled in size in the last 9 months, and that's caused massive cash flow problems for them, and also operational challenges. So it's not just those people who are struggling at one end in terms of business disappearing. There are those people who can't cope because they've now got too much business. You're established and looking to make steady progress. Lots of people get to a steady state, so they realize that actually this isn't going to give them their dream income. How do you move the business forward? Already established but struggling to go any further. This is the overwhelmed position, where everybody's trying to run 100 miles an hour, but it's not possible to grow any further because there's nobody to take on anything new. You can't add any more customers at that point because you can't cope with them. And those are the ones that I tend to get the phone calls for, the overwhelmed ones, that it's all going pear-shaped, profits are dropping off a cliff, something has to change, and that's when I get a phone call. But the thing to do is to evaluate your business, plan where it's going to go to, measure how it's getting there, keep evaluating it, and keep planning it. It's a continual process. I will use the word plan a number of times this evening. It is the most important thing you can do when you are growing your organization. If you are growing and you haven't planned it and you haven't controlled it, it can quickly consume you and can end up with the business then potentially folding when you run out of money. Your business now is cute and cuddly. This is where you start out. Everything seems relatively simple and straightforward. You've got a few clients, it's all very easy. But as the picture, when it grows up, it's not quite so cuddly and it's a little bit more ferocious. So it's very easy for your business to get out of hand as it grows. And I can put my hand up and say that my business has done the same thing. I'm having to learn these same lessons. The business has taken over and I'm now having to change the way I do business to cope with that. So planning growth is critical, whatever stage your business is at, particularly if growth is already happening. As it says, you might not already be the one in control of your business. If you have a product that's suddenly sort of driving your business, it may already be something that's going to cause you problems. I worked with a company a number of years ago that were a print company, and they decided they were going to print onto cushions for Mother's Day. They stuck this on Instagram and got 9 months of order in 1 month. And it put them out of business because they couldn't fill the orders. It caused massive problems. And it was a case of careful what you wish for. They hadn't planned for the success of the product. And in the end, they ended up in court because people were suing them for not delivering. So it's something to watch out for, something to plan for. Planning will ensure your business's scope to set up with additional workloads, the financial constraints and demands that your business is going to have, the customer demands, because they get harder the more customers you have, and what resources you will need. So that's equipment, people, money, property, everything that you'll need in your business as you grow, start thinking about. Now, you may be very small and thinking, this isn't going to affect me. But as you grow, quickly you'll become overwhelmed. And what you want to do is plan the point where you add help and support into your business before you get to the point of being overwhelmed by it. So questions to ask yourself. If we're suddenly very successful, how successful could that be? Start put some numbers to it. What would you do if that happened? What would you do if you suddenly got the largest order you've ever received to be delivered next month? How would you cope? What would you do with the existing orders that you've already got in the system? What would you do? Start thinking about the answers to those questions. And what you can do then is start to think, if that happened, I'd bring in one of my partners to help me, or we can quickly bring in some short-term staff. But the more you think about it, the more you start to write down a provisional plan. Means if and when that happens, you've already got something in place to quickly switch to. It's still going to be painful, but you have a better chance of responding to it if you've thought about what might happen in the first place. The other way of looking at this, and this is the bit that I'm more focused around, is that rather than letting the growth drive you, you decide where you would like your business to go to. Now, whether that's a number of, in terms of doubling the turnover, doubling the revenue, or even better, picking a number that starts to give you the lifestyle and the outcome that you'd always wanted your business to have. Start planning the point of success for your organization. If you need to have £1 million company to give you £100,000 a year profit based on a 10% net profit of the business, then how are you going to get your organization to £1 million? Rather than doing what most businesses do, which is just work as fast as you possibly can, see where you get to, think about, how would I get to £1 million? What steps would I have to take? So there are lots of steps, and we're trying to pack into 40 minutes something which takes me 6 months to drill into MDs of multinational, international, and multi-million pound companies. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to cover here, and I suspect there's lots of things that we've glossed over, and I'll skip over very quickly. So there's a section at the end of the session today to ask some questions, but also we're available after the session or online afterwards, or through the one-to-one sessions, to pick up on any things that we sort of skip over that you would like to go back in more detail. Setting the goals is absolutely critical for everything that I do in terms of the way I work with clients, and should be one of the most important things you guys do for your business. Evaluating the goal. What does it look like when you get there? Designing the business to run without you is critical, and we'll come back to that in a bit more detail shortly. How will customers, products and services change? How will you maintain customer service when you get to that level? Who will you need? What will your organizational structure look like? What skills do you need? How will you structure a management process? You might be just you in the business right now, if you're thinking, I don't need a management process. But think about the point where you suddenly need to start taking on a couple of people. You may be bringing some partners in. There has to become some kind of structure in place, and it's better to plan that now than it is to wait until it happens. How you sell, how you market, what you say, and how you identify to the public and to your customers will change. And then we'll come to action plan, finance and time bits at the end, because these are the critical bits that will help you move forward. So why do we set goals? 42% more likely to achieve your goals if you write them down. So there's some studies that have been done in America to start to look at the methodologies around getting people to actually stick to their goals. You increase that chance if you increase it to 65% if you tell somebody. So don't just write it down, but you start introducing that element of accountability. Having told somebody, somewhere in the back of your mind, you don't want to let them down. You don't want to look foolish by having announced it and then not deliver. Even better is to tell somebody that you have to keep telling on a regular basis, who are prepared to ask and check on you on a week by week or a month by month basis. And this produces accountability, which means you are 100% more likely to achieve the goal than you would do otherwise. That accountability is essentially what I do with my clients. And it's the process of keeping a business honest and focused, and only working on the things that are most important to the organization, and not the things that come up every day because they will distract. Setting the goal, make sure that you focus. So one of the things that the goal becomes is almost like a lens to look at your business through. Now, the stars here represent all the things that you might have to do, all the opportunities, the new projects, the new customer that's come along, or the new product that's been launched to market that you've been given the opportunity to try and amalgamate into your business. The thing to do is to start to look at the actions and say, really nice project, would really add value to my business, but it's not going to get to my goal. Should I be doing it? Now, you can decide whether you want to accommodate that and add it to your business, that's fine. But this process just starts with, let's say, these are the things that will actually get me to this goal. Should I be doing these other things that might be really interesting, but if I go a hard look at them and say, actually, it's not going to help me get where I want to get to, should I be doing it at all? And if you do that, the chances are you'll pick the right things to do. So this is the stuff that we've been talking about. So most people start here at year one, and they work really hard. And if you're really lucky, with a lot of work and hard and effort, you will grow the business and be better off for it. Now, I've shown this going out to year 5. In reality, working this way by just working hard, most businesses fail in 3 years. 80% of businesses do not get past 3 years. And 80% of the businesses that get past 3 years do not get to 5 years. So working hard is not necessarily the best way of growing your business. What is much more effective and tied into setting goals is to do this and say, to get to the point where I will have the right kind of income that I need or the lifestyle that I want, I'm going to set a goal that will allow me to do that. So in this case, we've just put £1 million in there to give £100,000 salary, or £100,000 profit to business. And what you can see is we then draw this curve. It's an exponential curve, which means you don't have to find all of the growth in year 1. It's all about steady, gentle growth, planning the next steps. But it's about looking at what you do today and what you would have to do to be at £1 million turnover, and saying, what would I need to change? And that's what we're going to go through in a second, because that's what it's going to force you and allow you to change your business to cope with being £1 million company. Now, that might seem a very, very long way away, but it's not dependent on how you want to grow your business. Just been doing some work with a guy who he set up his business in April last year. He's charging £200 a time for the thing that he's delivering, and quick look at what he offers, it should be £2,000 at a time. If he gets 5 guys working for him, working at £2,000 a time, they can do 5 of these things a day, he can run a £1.5 million business. He's currently operating at £30,000. Just by doing this process, we're able to redesign his organization and the number of people he needs to get to that target. So it's really powerful. So by setting goals, it changes the scale of where you'll imagine you'll get to. Suddenly you're now talking about being £1 million company rather than being a £50,000 company. It really does change how you feel about your organization and starts to make this feel completely achievable, therefore you're more likely to achieve it. It changes your behavior because you're now focusing on the next step. Gives you that self-belief that actually you've now got the stepping stone to get to that £1 million. And that's really important. You have to believe it. You have to see the stepping stones. It gives you that energy. It's amazing how many businesses I've worked with where they're struggling to see how they can grow the organization. They're struggling to see how they can really sort of make sales. We do this. Suddenly, they now have the tools to create a business that's going to give them what they wanted. And it helps them focus their minds around the things that they're doing or selling as to which ones will actually help them scale. Too often people are trying to scale with the wrong products, and it's being open-minded enough to say, we have to change if we want to get to our target. We can't just try and sell more and more of the same thing if those things are never going to get us there. So it's about how serious we are about where we want to get to. Helps you start to look at other ideas, other products, other services, other ways of delivering your product, other sales methodologies. lots of businesses in the last 9 months have had to adapt their business to cope with the coronavirus. How are they now selling? And some of them have found that selling online and selling slightly different methodologies have actually been far more profitable than the thing they were doing beforehand. So this gives you an idea of how to sort of start to think about those things. So the process that I run through is around setting goals. We start to evaluate which strategies could get us there. Is it sell more stuff? Is it sell more expensive stuff? Is it partnering with somebody else to open a door into a new market? Is it completely introducing new products completely? So it's starting to think about how would we get there. Once you have that strategy, the approach that you're going to take to get to your goal, you can write down a plan. Here are the key things that need to happen. That plan has a series of actions. And what we do then is we manage those actions, put timescales against them, we prioritize them because they're not all equal. And if we keep revisiting this process on a monthly basis, start ticking off those actions against the plan, according to the strategy, you'll hit the goals. This is classic project management. This is kind of what I've done for most of the last 25 years, starting with an end date and working backwards in terms of what do I have to do to get there. The key thing here is find somebody that's going to force you to keep doing this. Somebody that you have to check in with on a regular basis who will make sure that you are actually moving forward and you're sticking to the deadlines that you put in your action plan. So having set your goals and thought about where you would like to get to, it doesn't matter whether it's double your turnover, whether it's add an extra £50,000 or £20,000, or you want to take a business to 47 million. I had one young enterprising chap the other day who had turned over £5,000 last year and was confidently telling me he had a £53 million business plan for the following year. Unlikely, but I admired his aspirations. So you decide where you set those goals. So think about how your business runs today. So this is evaluating where you are. How many customers can you service today comfortably? How many products can you make? How many times can you deliver the service that you offer? How much money have you got? How much money are you making? What's your profitability look like? How many people do you currently employ? How are your processes and systems in your business defined? Do you understand them? Are they nailed down? This is going to be really important as you scale, because right now it's probably all done by you. I guarantee as you grow the business, it won't be done by you and it'll be done by somebody else. And you'll have to train that person to do it almost as well as you do. And if you haven't got it written down and nailed and you don't understand the process enough to write it down, the chances are of them doing it right the same as you is lessened. So it's really important. And having looked at those things that you do today, think about those same things when you get to the target. Will they all still be the same? How many, if you're making 10 parts a week at the moment, and that's what you're selling, and to get to £1 million turnover, you have to sell 1,000 parts a week. How will you make 1,000 parts? Does the machine that you've got get that far? Can you maintain the same level of quality? Where are you going to put them all before you ship them? Have you got enough storage space? How many people do you need to now run the facility? How many labels do you have to print off? Do you have enough materials to actually make that many parts? Can your supplier give you that many parts? So it's just, you start to think about what would change. So looking at your business, these are all the key areas that your business needs to think about, and you as the business owner need to be aware of. Your finances, your people, the systems and processes. What equipment have you got? Data, IT, what infrastructure have you got? So that's the systems, processes, software, that's the building, everything that goes in with the business that you operate. Who are your suppliers? Who are your customers? What are you selling? What are you giving away? What do you do? How do you sell what you do? You've got to start thinking about these things now in the business, because this is the stuff that keeps your business flowing anyway. But when you change because you're growing the business, then you have to assume everything that you do, everything that you think about will change in some way. And it's starting to think about, how will that change? What will it cost me? How long will it take to change? What will I have to do to stop it being a problem later on? So one of the things you can do at this point is to reevaluate where your business model will fit at the new scale, at the new target volume, or the where you've doubled your turnover. Revisit your business model and just make sure that you understand that it's still the same, or that your business model is adapted to cope with the new volumes. Some of you may have seen the business model canvas webinar that we did before Christmas. I'm not going to go back through the whole details, but for those of you who would want a simple tool that allows you to really evaluate exactly how your business is to operate and what are the key things, and use it to start to sort of reevaluate business model, then go and have a look at the business model canvas. Drop us a line if you would like the slides from that original presentation. Alternatively, there are lots of videos on YouTube that will walk you through this process. Gives you that oversight into the business, and it's really important you understand where your business will be operating at the new volume, because you may move sectors, you may move into a different echelon. You've suddenly gone from being an occasional supplier to suddenly now being important in the industry. Does everything else around your business stack up to that same target? For those of you who haven't seen it before, it breaks it down to 9 boxes. Everything on the right-hand side is around customer. So the process is simply, you look at your value proposition, what it is that you do, what is it that you're specifically charging for, what service where do you actually add value, and look at, with your customer, what relationship do you have with the customer themselves? How do you sell? How do you generate your money? How many different sort of channels have you got? Revenue streams have you got? The other side is all about the suppliers, all the materials, all the things that you need in your business to be able to make or service the thing that you do here with your customers. Apologies from Dave, the ice cream maker. Those of you that did see the webinar previously, he was the model that we built the business model canvas around. And what you do is you start to sort of take each of these boxes and individually start listing all the things that could be important in those boxes. And the way it's typically done is something like post-it notes. And you do this as teams quite often, or do this with other people who have you respect from a business perspective, or your trusted advisors around you, to come up with what would be important in those things. And all of these things then start to be the things you need to start to think about. It's not exhaustive, but the idea is to try and tease out as many things that you probably wouldn't have thought about for your business as possible. So step 3, design the business to run without you. At some point, as your business grows, you cannot be everywhere. You cannot do everything. There may be times when you are out of the business talking to a new supplier, you're discussing a new contract. Sometimes when that happens, the business still has to continue. It can't stop when you're not there, particularly if you've got deadlines. So how does the business run when you are not in the business? It's really important that you just do that. If you want to have the ability to take time out to, as you grow the business to nearing the point of your success, if you are responsible for any of the operational activity in your business, the things that actually have to happen day to day, then your business will struggle, because you cannot be everywhere. And the bigger it gets, the more that takes. So that's where you need a team of people to do those things. It can't just be about you. But if you start to design it from the word go, this will really help you. And it's one of the things that limits most businesses. It's the point where I normally get the phone call, is because a business owner has grown to maybe £1 million turnover with their business, can't go any further, but are working 95 hours a week just to stand still, and sometimes don't even have time to have a conversation with me. So design it to run without you. You might not need a team now, but there will be a point in time where you start to bring people on board, and what you want is them to be able to run the business and do the things in your business day to day that you have always done to get to this point. Start to identify the things that you do today and work out a point in time where you won't be the one doing it. I don't want to be the one who starts the machines up in the morning by the 1st of June. So by the 1st of June, who's going to switch them on? Who will have that responsibility? Will we have an automated system that has timers so that nobody has to do it? But something will have to change, which means I don't have to get up early and go down to the factory and switch on the machines. So start looking at the things that would need to change to allow you to not be the one to do it. As a business owner, your value in the business is to look over the business. It is to steer and guide. You have more value outside of your business, presenting your brand and engaging with your customers, than you do inside the business running the ship. So the analogy is steer the ship. Be the one up on looking the direction, trying to avoid the icebergs. You're not the one that's down in the engine room shoveling coal into the furnace. We all do it. And there'll be a point where you balance out, you're completely operational, and slowly you'll start to be a lot more strategic, and other people will do the things day to day. And at a point in time, you'll stop being operational. And if one thing you take away from today, for those of you who haven't read it and haven't come across it, go and find The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. This book maps out the process and how you design your organization to run without you. And it highlights and covers the 3 core disciplines of running a business: being a technician, being a manager, and being the entrepreneur, the 3 things a business must have. Most people revert into just being the technician, the doing. If you don't have the other 2 things, your business won't survive for long. It certainly won't thrive. So those of you, it's probably of all the books that I've read, the one that really helps in terms of focusing how to grow your business, how to run it, and particularly design it such that you aren't the one that has to run it day to day at some point in the future, so that you can actually enjoy life. You can run other projects. You can work 2 days a week if that's what you want to, because then at that point you've got a business that runs itself and can afford to run itself. And that's the other aspect of this. So step 4, start thinking about your customers, your products. Are you selling the same thing? If you double your turnover, are you still just going to try and sell more of the same thing? Or are you going to introduce new products that have higher value, higher margin? Are you going to move into a different sector? Are you going to add products to your existing product range, or team up with a third party? Will you sell them in the same way? Are your customers the same people? You've grown, your product's increased in price, it's improved in quality, it's improved in the level that you would sell it at. You're no longer a commodity product, you've now specialized a little bit. Is it the same customers? Your marketing, your selling, everything will change to your now the new market that you're trying to sort of sell to. So think about where you would be at that point in time. If you're just doubling your turnover, you're currently turning over 60, 70, 80,000 pounds. Chances are most of the things won't change. You will be selling more of the same thing. But start to think about whether you should, and whether other things you could do that would improve the profitability of what you're doing. Think about your products and services. How could you make that many of them? How could you deliver that many of whatever it is you do? If your job is going out and doing surveys on properties to go and do building and remedial works, then how many can you actually do in a week? If you can't do enough to get to your target number, you'll need help. Then the question is, should you be the one going out doing fittings and doing site surveys? I recently did some work with a £6 million high-end woodworking carpentry company that does very, very expensive kitchens. And the MD still prides himself on being the person who goes out and measures the kitchen, which is utterly insane. And on reflection has highlighted that's where his services are better used. Because apparently he quite often gets it wrong as well. There are better people to do the job for him. How many customers will you need? You have 10 customers now. To get to your new target, you now need 100 customers. That's quite scary. So how are you going to get them? What are you going to do? What's the marketing campaign look like? How many salespeople do you suddenly now need? So it's really starting to think about what are the steps. Now, to go from where you are today to that magical £1 million turnover is not one step. First step on that curve was probably going to, from 10 customers, going to 12, 13, maybe 15 customers at the end of the second year. Maybe going to 30, 35, 40 the following year. And slowly that ramps up. And once, as you accelerate up that curve, it will become easier to add clients because you're operating in a different place. But it's step by step. Don't eat the whole elephant one go. One of the things that also changes is how do you look after your customers? What's the customer service look like? Who will you need in your organization? What skills do you need? Have you got the right people? How much will it cost to have that many people when you're at £1 million turnover? You've now got 25 people working for you. How will you afford that? Have you built that into your operating costs? Do you, as the business owner, have the skills necessary to grow to the scale that you want to get to? You might need to have a management system in place that allows the managers to take the responsibility of the day-to-day operation so that you can make strategic decisions. How do those teams meet? Are you separating operational, management and strategic conversations so you don't blur those things and they're clearly defined? As you grow, do you need an HR process? How are you looking after your people? Operationally, how do you actually do what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Managing suppliers, can they cope with increased volumes? Do you have more than one supplier so that if one falls over, you're not let down? Are there partners? Can you outsource some of the things that you do so it's not you having to do it? At each step on that curve that we drew, start to work out what you will need and start to look at what that will cost you. How long will it take to get those things in place? If you need a fantastically skilled individual to do a specific task and you know to try and find the person to do that is going to take you 6 months to find them, then work out on that chart where you need to start the hiring process so that they are in place at the point when you get to that high volume. In the premises that you're in, do they suit your purposes now, but will they adjust as you grow? You might need more storage. You might need more people. What's that going to cost you? Do you suddenly start moving from small premises into something that now qualifies for business rates? Does that suddenly add a significant cost to your business as you go up the scale? Commercial leases can be challenging. Do you understand the pitfalls of the bigger they are, the costs associated with them? But also you've now got a bigger team, so health and safety starts to become a bigger part of what you do. Sales and marketing. So how are you going to sell that many products? Do you now need a sales team? Because it was all about you previously, but now it can't be all about you because you can't speak to every one of your customers because you've now got hundreds of them. So who's going to do that for you? What's your marketing budget look like? You've now got to get to 100 people rather than to 10 people that you were trying to get to previously. You have to think more strategically. What does your brand stand for? Does the imagery, do you look like a high-end company if you're now selling a high-end product? Or do you still look like the company that was selling the £5 version? Start to think about how you need to change those things. That costs money, it takes time to get right. Have you raised your profile? One of the ways to get more sales is to make sure that you are seen in the industry as being a major player. Start talking about successes, case studies, make sure people know that you are good at what you're doing. And the other thing to think about is your price doesn't have to stay the same. Think about, is there a market for your price, your product at a higher price? Are there people who will pay for a £50 version of the thing that you sell for £10? Can you adjust your products to make that more expensive version without actually incurring significantly more costs? And you'd be surprised how often that happens. So the key steps. This is an example of an action plan. It's all the tasks, all the things that we've identified that a business needs to do, going through that list of every one of the different aspects of it, and just writing down what needs to change. We allocate a name against it and a date against it, and we track this on a month-by-month basis. And you can move that around on a month-by-month basis to give you the things that are most important. Prioritize the things that give you the most impact to your business, the things that are most urgent, and focus only on the top 2 or 3 things at a time. Ignore the rest. Don't try and do everything, because you'll do nothing. To identify the first 2 or 3 things, get them done, get them ticked off, move on. And that will start that momentum of growing your business incrementally, continuous improvement, continuously addressing those things in your business that are going to stop you getting to that £1 million turnover, or whatever your target is. But you need a process where you sit down and do this on a regular basis. Start to think from a risk management point of view. So we're starting to talk a little bit corporately here. These are the kind of systems and processes that are in place for much bigger organizations, but they apply to you guys. What can go wrong? How could your business be affected by something in a year or 2 years' time as your business grows and you're significantly bigger? What are the things that could cause you problems? Think about it. Think about what you could do about them now to stop them happening. And it saves a lot of time and heartache later. Have an accountability process. So this is the bit where you sit down on a week by week, month by month basis and track those actions to completion, because it's what will help you get to the point where your business has been improved. This works. It's what I do with all my clients, and it makes a huge difference because it's about tracking progress and holding people in your organization to account as well. But the things that will trip you up the most, and the thing that think about and concentrate on the most: time, cash flow, and profitability. Cash flow is the thing that kills more businesses than anything else. Running out of money, because as you grow, the cost of buying in materials up front gets bigger. The cost per unit stays the same, it might even come down, but you're now buying in larger quantities. You may start dealing with larger customers who may have longer payment terms, so don't pay on delivery. It starts becoming 30 days or 60 days, or if it's a government contract, it might be 90 days. Or as one of my clients once found out, 9 months on a £250,000 order, that they had to spend £180,000 up front. So their terms of paying were 30 days, and they then had to carry that cost for 9 months. This is to a Middle Eastern country. Hadn't read the terms and conditions, something they hadn't planned for, and it pretty much put them out of business. You will never have enough time to do everything. So that prioritization process will allow you to concentrate on only the things that are important, because there are some things that you just don't need to worry about. They will look after themselves. If you try and do everything or do the things that you are most comfortable with, you'll miss the big stuff. And profitability. This is the thing I see time and time again. Not stopping to check that as I've grown my business, as my overheads have increased, that I've got my pricing right. Am I still making money? I'm working with a multi-million-pound organization now that we've moved them from being loss-making to probably going to make £1 million profit this year, simply because they missed the fact they've lost their profit in their pricing. As they've grown, they hadn't maintained their margins. So I can't overstate this. Manage those 3 things: time in your business, the cash flow, and profitability, and pretty much everything else will be fine. Yes, you'll start to put some attention into it, but get those things through right. It will make a huge difference the way that your business will grow. So look at every part of your business, particularly from a cash flow point of view. What's it going to cost you? Are you going to try and do 2 or 3 big things, new machines, new equipment, take on new staff all at the same time? Is that wise? Can you spread these things out? There should be a forecast that allows you to predict what it's going to cost you at various points and react to that. Set your sale price based on your overheads, the cost of materials, any contingency, flexibility, things going wrong, but you put profit on at that stage. You define what you want your profit to be. You don't suddenly put 30% markup on materials costs and hope that's going to give you a profit. It's work out up front what profit margin you want on top of the materials that's going to guarantee you a sell with the sell price is going to give you profit. I've worked with lots of companies who've put a 30% or a 40% margin on the cost of the guys going to site, assuming that that will give them profit. By the time you add in all the overheads and the other costs associated with the business, they're actually losing money. It happens to big companies. It will happen to you if you're not careful. cash flow becomes more of an issue. As you double turnover, it can quadruple the challenges associated with managing the money. The pain gets harder the bigger you get. And it's why quite often having people around you who have grown businesses or are experienced at a higher level is really important. You may need to borrow to invest in some equipment or cope with shortfalls in cash flow. Planning it, focusing on it, certainly helps you overcome those hurdles. If you know you're going to have a difficult couple of months and you have a revolving credit facility with the bank or with an investor, it will help you get through those painful points. If cash flow limits what you're doing, it will cause you to slow down and can cost you the business. The other thing you want to have in place is make sure you have good credit control. Are your people paying when they're supposed to be paying? And are you paying people when you need to, only when you need to have to do so? You can manage those things to make sure it's in your favor, but you haven't got outstanding debt, people messing you about. And there are simple things that you can do, even at the point when you send the invoice, to increase the likelihood that someone will pay on time or possibly even early. So almost there. Revisit your business plan. These are the things that you should have had in the first place. When you first started the business, these are the things that are going to keep you focused and keep you the business thriving. They still apply. They're even more important now. Do these things still look as if they're okay as you've planned your business going forward? As you grow, revisit this. It will give you that clarity. Have we lost our way? Have we gone down that rabbit hole chasing something that we shouldn't be doing? It just keeps that sanity check in place. So, last one. Grow your business carefully. As I say, plan, 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 plan. If you don't plan, it could bite you. More businesses fail each year by growing too fast.
I can't help you get songs from Spotify.
Sorry, that's Alexa decided she wants to step in. More businesses fail each year by not running out of money than they do by running out of customers. And it's something like 75% to 25%. It's quite scary. How much is growth going to cost you? Because it will cost you. There is an investment in your time, energy, materials, people. So plan those costs, plan that growth. Focus on profitability, know your costs and your overheads, focus on cash flow. That will help you grow the business. So we're at the end, we're at the bit where you guys get to ask some questions. Hopefully we've covered lots and lots of stuff there, whistle stop through lots and lots of subjects. And say this is a 6-month program with people who've been running businesses for 20 years. So expecting you guys to get this in 40 minutes at that speed is unlikely, but it's a chance to just use this as tick list to start to think about your business, and you know where to come to ask some questions if you would like some help.
Thank you very much, Paul. Well, we had a few questions in the Q&A, which were largely about, can we make sure we get the slides? So people are loving the content.
Yep.
And also, can we get access to the previous session? So just as to be clear, the last session, Paul and I both were so giddy and excited, we forgot to press the record button. So it's the only one we didn't record, but we have got the slides, which we can share as a PDF, and we'll do that afterwards. We've just had a question come in. How do you measure growth, Paul?
That depends on what's important to you. So that can be done on revenue, that can be done on profitability. It can be done on volumes of output. So you decide what you would like that to be. I've got a company at the moment who are particularly focused around revenue. And I'm trying to educate them at the moment that actually managing profitability is more important, so that you can focus on cost savings as much as you can on actual direct sales. So, and we're growing the business around profit rather than necessarily around revenue, because it's very easy. There's that saying around sort of revenue, profit, cash, and king. So it's the revenue's insanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. So it's a really focus around actually making money is the important bit. So it doesn't matter you've got £1 million turnover. If it's cost you £1 million to do that, then it's not worth having the business.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you're looking for an exit strategy with your business at some point in the future, a rough metric is 4 times your declared profit. So you may have £1 million turnover business, but if you're only making £100,000 a year, your sale price is probably around £400,000 plus any assets and some goodwill alongside it. And it's that common mistake. I run £1 million business, therefore it's worth £1 million. It's not. If you're not making any money and you're just about breaking even, your business is worthless. And if your business is dependent on you as the business owner at that point in time, and you don't go with the sale, then your business is also worthless.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Another question. In your last second slide, so I don't know if you want to flick back one, about business plan, what did you mean by people?
So that's a generic thing, but it's your staff, your advisors, your managers, anybody that you interact with. It's what are your relationships? Do you have job descriptions and roles and responsibilities? Do you understand people specs? Do you understand salary expectations? Do you understand how to manage people, manage teams? Do you have team leaders? Do you understand what the structure is? So it's thinking about how would you look after those things. And those change as you grow, you start to kind of put a process in place. Small, you might have 2 or 3 people that report to you. It's really easy to manage. Start to get into sort of 10, 15 people, you can't do it on your own and do all the good stuff that helps grow your business. And there's a point, the saying, at the point where managing the people is harder than selling your product is the point where you have to change the business. So the aim is to try and avoid that happening. A number of times I talk to MDs, they're spending almost their whole time sorting out problems with people, personal problems, people not turning up, somebody's cat died yesterday, they haven't turned up for the last 4 days, didn't tell anybody. Those things start to damage the business. Having systems and processes that stop those things happening and allow other people to deal with it so you can focus on what's important. And at that point, having an HR plan in place. Above 5 employees, you must have some kind of HR process in place. And I don't just mean compliance in terms of paying them, but how do you develop people? How do you give them opportunities? What's the training? There's performance, capability, the appraisal systems. There's all sorts of things that you start to have to think about in terms of managing people. And it's stuff that if you are a one-man band and you've never run your own business, you may not have the experience of doing. There are things that I had to learn when I started out running my own business after running in corporate world for 25 years. I'm not a salesman, so I had to go back and learn how to sell. Thankfully, I've done plenty of stuff around managing people, and my business is built around associates rather than employing people. So I'm assuming that they're of a professional nature that I don't have to manage them carefully, but even then, it's still like herding cats sometimes.
Yeah, brilliant. So I'm just aware of the time. I'm assuming you can probably hang on for a few minutes answering questions, Paul.
No problem at all, as long as it takes.
Yeah, and so we'll keep going answering questions. If anybody does need to drop off, we'll send you the slides and things afterwards. The other thing just to highlight for anyone who's new to this, you will get more emails from me inviting you to future Startup Club events. You're now part of the club. So we assume that once you're part of the club, you at least want to know about the other events and you can choose whether you join or not. And it's always the same link. So the link you've used for this, it's worth keeping. So great. So if you do need to drop off, please do. Other questions then, Paul. How do you project your thinking, your goals, your other stuff when you don't know how well a product or service is going to be taken up in the market?
That's slightly more challenging, but that's where you need to do some market research and start to get a sense of, is there demand for your product? So if there's demand, then in theory, you should be able to eke out some margin in the market. And you have got to start making some assumptions from there. If you've got a product that's not going to sell, then you're going to have difficulty scaling it. So there's an element of sort of chicken and egg here. You have to sort of make sure that you know your product sells. There's no point planning £1 million worth of growth in your business if you're at the point where you've only sold 3 things.
Yeah.
You might start to plan, how would I get to 20 things or 50 things or 100 things? but you take it in stages and you keep doing this. You don't plan it all up front. You keep reevaluating it and you keep moving those goals.
Okay, fantastic. And the next one links a little bit to that. So would you recommend any books or websites to help with business plan writing? And before you answer it, I'm just going to highlight, that is a useful book. So depending on where you are in your business, but within that, this talks about something that Paul's just mentioned there, build, measure, learn. So if you're not sure what your market looks like, get your minimum viable product, get something that you can test the market with, measure what the market thinks about it and learn from that and go around it. So it's the same plan, do, act, review cycle that you would have in any business planning. But yeah, a useful book to have a look at. It does help you with business planning, but I'll let you answer the rest of that question, Paul.
I think that covers it. In terms of books, I mentioned the E-Myth. That's a great business book. There are loads of books out there that will help you think about your vision. Start with Why by Simon Sinek is a great book to give you that why are you doing what you're doing and help you think about how you then communicate that to the outside world. It's a great way to start. So there's lots of books. There's lots of different aspects, and depending on what industry you're in as well, there are different ways of engaging with it.
Fantastic. So that book was called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Branding then, Paul.
Yes.
Can you be quite broad in your branding, or should you be being specific, targeted to customers or products?
Personally, I think you need to be really, really clear about who your customers are. It's focus your product and focus your messaging to appeal to those people who are most likely to buy your product. So identify where they live, what they earn, where they operate, what kind of quantities they operate in, what kind of quality they are insisting upon, and ensure that your brand matches that. There is no point you look like you are a market trader if you're trying to sell into Microsoft, for instance. So you have to, it's about making sure that the credibility is there, so that if somebody goes looking at your history, goes looking at what you do and how you act, does it fit with the kind of business they want to do business with? So as an example, I was approached a couple of years ago by a guy who was a very talented chef, was setting up a in-house dining company, high-end, almost Michelin starred level, and his brand and everything was not great. If you then Googled him and pulled up his Facebook profile, which he'd forgotten to set any of his security settings on, you got a taste of what he does on a Saturday night and what state he gets into on a Sunday morning. Suddenly his brand had no credibility whatsoever. So it's thinking about all of those things. It's how do you portray yourself? What do you say about yourself? What do other people say about yourself? And a little test to get to give you, when somebody goes looking for you, put your name, your sector, your industry, and where you live into Google and click on images. And just get a sense of what does it say about you? What can I find out by just doing that quick check? Because that will give you an indication of how the world will see you if they don't know you when they go searching for you. So I've done this many times. I've deleted all the evidence, it's fine. But there's loads of stuff on there, projects that I've run, loads of content, special offers that I put out through the business, photos of things that I've been involved in, there's some royal visits that I've been involved in, some community projects. It just gives a real sense of the thing that I say I do when I approach you and say, this is what I'm experienced in, is there to see. It enhances the brand. And it may be that you work with a PR agency. So again, work out how you do the right thing. Good friend of mine, her whole business plan has been around getting on television, and she's done it. There are huge gaps in her abilities, her ability to deliver what she does, but she's now made a name for herself, and the perception and the brand is now untouchable, to the point where BBC, ITV, Radio 5 regularly phone her up and say, can you come on as a spokesperson? So she's achieved everything she wants to achieve. Is her product brilliant? I wouldn't have said so, but she's done it brilliantly by managing the brand.
Fantastic, thank you. As a startup, what credit terms could you expect to receive from suppliers? So, if any.
Very little, unfortunately. Credit is earned. There is an assumption that you are a risk. If you're a startup and you have no trading history, you can't go very far. So working capital is really important. If you, for a pure startup, there are some government schemes up to £25 million. I think it's about 6%, better than commercial terms. So that's a government-backed scheme to give you some working capital, and I would suggest that's the way to get you to the point where you don't have to negotiate terms. If somebody was prepared to give you some terms, that's fine, but it's rare because you might not survive 10 minutes and they'll be out of pocket. So quite a lot of businesses just don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. Price setting. Could you explain a little bit more about how you work out your price?
Okay. You need to be really clear about not just the cost of the materials. So I'm buying, I'll give you an example. So someone I talked to yesterday, they buy and sell cars, but they then do up the car. So it costs them £10,000 to buy a car. They spend £20,000 on new bits, new components, paying people to get the car ready to go. So they spent £10,000 buying it, £20,000 doing it up. They then were trying to sell it at £35,000–40,000. What they completely missed, that at the time it had taken to make that product, they had to pay cleaning staff, they had to pay for gas, electric, they were paying leases, they were paying subscriptions, their IT systems. They incurred £12,000 in the period it took to do up this car. So their total cost actually worked out less than the price they were charging. They were losing money overall, even though on the pure, we bought the car at £10,000, we've sold it at £35,000–40,000. There's £40,000 profit in there. Aren't we amazing? When you actually look at the numbers, they'd lost money. So it's really important that you manage the cost of materials, your full overheads. That's everything that your business costs. On top of that, and you might need to work out a contribution for individuals per hour. What does it cost to employ somebody? And it's not just what you're paying them. There are on costs, and then there are other aspects of the business that you apportion to the individuals. I've talked about contingency. So there may be variability in the product. I work with an engineering company where something goes wrong on every project. They're a utilities company, and guaranteed what they ask for isn't what they actually wanted because they're useless. And every time it's, oh, we didn't order enough of this, or that's in the wrong place, or we didn't measure that properly. And that's the customer on site doing that. They have to then go back and change things and modify things. So they build that into the price up front, and they add about 15%. So that gives you your total cost and total variability. Then you stick on top of that your profit margin, and only then. So if you sell it at the total cost of the costs, you break even if nothing else, and then anything you stick on top is your profit. And I would strongly suggest, in the way that I work with my clients, is you pick a profit margin, say 20%, and you never ever sell something at less than 20% profit. You can choose to do that strategically to open a door for somebody, but if you get to the point where you always make 20% on everything you sell, you will end the year on a 20% net profit. And that's where you want to be with your business, because that 20% will be a fantastic business to be operating. But build it in at the point of sale. Don't do what lots of companies do, which is the hope for the best. And then when they come to do the annual accounts, go, we've had a great year sales wise, but look at all those costs we've incurred. We haven't made much money. So that's important. Hopefully that's, I've done this a few times, and I'm happy to go back and do something special around, specifically around pricing, because a lot of people get this wrong. Big companies get this wrong. Great.
And there's one last question, but I'm gonna give you a sort of general introduction to it and then ask the question. So,
okay.
You know, as you said, you know, some of these things you're going through, you know, your business. I'm sat here writing notes, exactly the same for my business. Getting some free support off you. Thank you very much, Paul. A lot of this is pretty scary.
Yes.
one of the first things you've got to do is decide what your risk appetite is and what your fear appetite is and how far you want to go on this. If you're going to set that goal for £1 million or a £5 million or a £50 million turnover, not everyone makes those choices. So
no.
My general question, I guess, is, when do you really need to bring the experts in to help you?
I'm biased because I am a business coach, but I would argue that a business coach will add value to any business at any level. And there is this complete misnomer that a business coach or a consultant or external business support is only there when things go pear-shaped. And that's probably the worst possible time to bring somebody on board, because there's very little you can do at that point. Working with a business coach from fairly early on, and they can start at relatively low levels from a cost perspective, can significantly add value to your business. Significant profit margins. They'll keep you honest. They'll give you that accountability. What it looks scary in terms of how to grow your business, all the things you have to remember to get this right, it is scary. It's a very long list. But if you're working with somebody who is experienced in all those things and can keep you focused and keep you honest, it's much, much easier. So I'm biased, but I think any business coach can add value. It's down to whether you want to commit to that growth, whether you want that help, whether you want that guidance. And it doesn't need to be all the time. You don't need to have somebody in your business every single day. It's not sort of hand-holding. It can simply be sort of touching base once a month. Have you thought about this? Here are the things that will help your business next month. Here are some actions. Go and do those, and we'll talk again in a month's time. It can be relatively light touch. Brilliant.
So the specific question then was, do you need a legal team to work out contracts for freelancers?
You don't need a legal team, but it is quite often useful to go and find a tame solicitor to run some more generic frameworks or agreements past them. So you've got some of those things in place. And then have, sometimes there's a retainer system where you pay a small amount of money to get access to somebody a certain amount of time per month or per year. Or you simply pay on a pay-as-you-go basis. Depending on what you are supplying into, you may have very little maneuverability. If you're supplying a government contract, there's no negotiation. You kind of take it or leave it. Something we know quite well. Other things, you may want to do some kind of sort of tweaks and modifications to it. If you can change it and you can agree it without having to go down the legal route, fantastic. If the T's and C's aren't clear, then it's maybe worth running that past a legal team. A few £100 for a lawyer to go through a document, which they can do relatively quickly and check those terms, could possibly save you thousands later on. One example, and I had this as a personal basis, there's a thing called Battle of Terms. So if you place an order and you put your terms and conditions on the back of that order, and the customer accepts your order with their terms and conditions on the back of the acceptance, under English law, their terms and conditions apply if there's a dispute, because you've accepted, they've accepted under these terms. I have been in a court case which was to the tune of nearly £1 million of damages over whose terms and conditions applied. There was a simple omission at the early stage of a project that cost us a fortune. In the end, we won, but it was 6 months of pain and misery. So there's little things like that where it's better to have somebody do that checking for you. And yes, it's not cheap, but a few £100 here and there will probably save you a fortune, depending on the value of the project.
Fantastic. Well, we have no more questions from the group. We've still got 12 very interested attendees. Hopefully they're all getting good value out of this. As we say, we'll circulate the information. Paul has mentioned there, he's potentially a little bit biased. What I would say is that he's not as biased as you might think, because he is, on contract with OxLEP, and, he's available for one-to-ones, and there is OxLEP support and programs out there. So it's not necessarily, there's eligibility criteria. So every startup business can't necessarily access all of the support, but depending on your business, then Paul or one of our other colleagues can have a conversation with you and work out what programs are there to support you. So if you've already got 5 staff, you've already got a turnover of 250 grand, but you've got ambitions in the millions, there's definitely programs that can support you.
Yeah, without question.
So what I would say is, if you've not explored OxLEP, please do. If you've not filled in the business support tool, please do. And thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've got a lot out of it, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you very much, everyone. See you soon.